once he was giving darshan on the roof and somebody brought him some mangoes. So he asked one of the brahmacharis to cut the mangoes, but they didn't know how to cut them properly. So then Srila Prabhupada actually took the mango and showed how to cut it in the proper way. And he said that a brahmachari should be expert in everything. Once we were walking on the beach in Jagannath Puri with Srila Prabhupada, and we were getting down near the edge of the ocean. Srila Prabhupada said that when I was a young man, just married, I came here dressed in khadi cloth, and I was running on the beach and jumping in the waves. But now, he said, just see the position. And he was walking along with his cane. He said, do not think that this won't happen to you. Once we came to see Srila Prabhupada in Hyderabad, after we'd been touring along the east coast of India. So Prabhupada called us into his room, and he was asking us how many sets of books we distributed, what did the professors think about the books. Then he told us that you should keep your health very good on traveling Sankirtan, and it's best if you don't eat any grains. Better just to eat vegetables and fruits, take milk products, and also nuts. And then he made a sign like that, cashew nuts. Every day like Ekadashi. In this way you can keep your health very strong. Once I went into Prabhupada's room, and he was sitting in the corner with his head in his hand like this. And he just sat there for a few minutes with a pained expression on his face. And then he looked up at me and he said, this Bombay project is such a headache, it's such a headache. And he paused and then he said, but it is for Krishna, so it is all right. Once in Delhi, we were taking a morning walk in the park. So there was a man standing on his head doing some yoga exercises. So some of the devotees began to laugh at him. And Prabhupada cut them short. He said, don't laugh. He said, this makes the body fit for spiritual life. Once a professor from the university in Aligarh offered Srila Prabhupada a set of Bhagavatams which included the commentaries of all the different acharyas. So I was requested to go and pick the books up from Aligarh. So I went there in the temple car, and it's about a 3-hour journey from Vrindavan. And when I got there, that professor showed me those books, and they were in 2 piles on the floor. One pile was cantos 1 to 9 plus 11 and 12, and the other pile was 10th canto, which contained about 11 commentaries. So I was about to take the books, and the professor said, I would like to become a life member in exchange for these books. So I wasn't sure what to do, but I thought, I've come all this way and Prabhupada needs these books, so I'd better take them somehow or other. I said that I'm sure you'll be able to become a life member, but I'll have to ask Srila Prabhupada. In the meantime, I'll take the books back to him. So when I brought the books back, Prabhupada examined them and he was pleased. He said, these are suitable. Then I told him that that man wanted to become a life member, and Prabhupada said, these books are worth 1,000 rupees. Tell him to pay the balance and he can become a life member. So that time life membership was 2,222 rupees. But when that man was informed, he didn't want to pay. He wanted to take the books back, but actually Prabhupada never gave the books back. And I think that matter was only settled many, many years after Srila Prabhupada's departure. But Prabhupada used those books for translating the Srimad Bhagavatam and writing his commentaries. Once I was in Srila Prabhupada's house in Vrindavan in 1974 during the Mayapur Vrindavan festival. And that time Madhavisa Swami was in the room and he was just leaving. So he was saying goodbye to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was thanking him for his service. Prabhupada told him that you are a perfect leader. And he said, I'm just trying to follow you, Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada replied, of course, he said, without following properly, you can never become a perfect leader. In 1973, I was made the president of Bury Place Temple in London. Just before that, the previous president had formed a organization called the Radha Krishna Guild, Radha Krishna Temple Guild, which was made up of congregational members who wanted to do some service. So the guild did things like buying gifts for the deities. And once in a darshan in the manor, one of the ladies from this guild stood up and she started making some complaint in Prabhupada's room. So afterwards, Srila Prabhupada called me into his room and started chastising me. He said that actually we don't have, afterwards Srila Prabhupada called me into his room and started to chastise me. He said that we only have one kind of membership, that's life membership. We don't require any other kind of membership like guild membership. Then he said that only properly qualified persons should be allowed to speak in the temple. And he kept repeating that point. He would have repeated it 4 or 5 times. Only the most qualified person should be allowed to speak in the temple room. Just in the beginning of 73. And he said that I'm very pleased to hear the good news of the traveling party in England. And I'm pleased to hear that the people of that country are interested in Krishna consciousness and they're taking our books. So you go on in this way, traveling to every town and village. Don't worry about your destination. Just go on preaching Krishna's message and distributing his books. Sometimes he said it must be very cold there and you mustn't be getting proper sleep or proper food, but because you've properly understood the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, therefore you've surpassed the feats of millions of yogis and transcendentalists and come to the topmost platform of surrendering to Krishna. So this is my challenge, that let anyone see how hard our devotees are working for Krishna and how they have surpassed the feats of all yogis and transcendentalists. Once we had a program in Kensington Town Hall in London, and it was packed out. It was a wonderful reception for Srila Prabhupada. At the end of the program, one Christian asked a question, and Prabhupada asked Rabharinandan and Swami to get up and answer that question. So Rabharinandan Maharaj answered him in a very convincing style, completely defeated him. And the whole audience erupted in applause. And I was sitting on the side of the stage, and I just remember seeing Srila Prabhupada turn round towards us, and his whole face lit up in such an effulgent smile, just looked like the sun. He was so happy to see how his disciple had defeated this rascal so convincingly. Once I remember he asked me about my personal life, where do you come from, and how long have you been in the movement? And then after I told him, he said, well, you're from Britain, the British expanded a big empire, so you spread the empire of Krishna consciousness. Actually told me that perhaps 3 different occasions. Once I brought my parents to see Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was very courteous to them. He took off his garland and he asked me to put it on my father. Then he said that, nice son, nice father. Whenever the son becomes a devotee, then 10 generations in the past and 10 generations in the future will be delivered. So my parents were very, very much impressed by Srila Prabhupada's kindness and courtesy. The last time I got personal instructions from Srila Prabhupada was in July of 1977. We'd been preaching in Bangladesh, and just around that time there was a disturbance in Mayapur where the temple was attacked by some Muslims, And it came out in the papers in Bangladesh that cruel foreign Vaishnavas attacked the timid Muslim villagers. So we'd been doing very big programs around Bangladesh, and the National Security Intelligence actually arrested us and told us to leave the country. So I came to Mayapur and discussed with my GBC, Jayapataka Maharaj, and suggested that it might be good to open a center in Nepal. So he gave me a letter, and I went to Vrindavan to see Srila Prabhupada. So that time Srila Prabhupada was very, very ill. I'd never seen him in such a condition. I went up to see him on his balcony on top of his house early in the morning, and he was wearing dark glasses and he looked very, very thin. But as soon as I came, then he began to speak to me and thanked me for going to preach in Bangladesh. And then he's told a story about one Bengali poet called Michael Madhusudan Datta, who went to England, but he was very frivolous and he lost all his money. So then he was begging money from different gentlemen. No one was giving him any money, but finally one person called Istachandra Vidyanagar, finally one person called can't remember the name. Finally one Bengali gentleman gave him a donation. So he said to that gentleman that you've got the courage of an Englishman and the heart of a Bengali mother. So Srila Prabhupada said that similarly you should preach with the courage of an Englishman and the heart of a Bengali mother. The British were famous for courage and expansion and spreading an empire all over the world. In fact, even America is created by the British. So in the same way, you should spread the empire of Krishna consciousness. And he said, if you need money, you take foreign currency, I'll give you, and you go and preach in these countries. You've got two nice fields of preaching, Bangladesh and Nepal. So I said that we need some foreign currency to show the government every month in Nepal, otherwise you can't extend your visa. So Prabhupada asked how much we needed, and I said $600 a month. So he said, you take that money, if you open a bank account, I'll send you the money every month. And similarly in Bangladesh, I'll send foreign currency and you can print books and preach there. And you should publicize that this is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami's money. You ventilate this in the press. Prabhupada used this word, ventilate it in the press. This is not American government money, but it's my own money which I've earned by writing books and printing those books and selling the books. So in this way he gave his blessings. He said, you take the courage of an Englishman and the heart of a Bengali mother and preach. So that was the last instruction I got from Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was extremely humble, and he gave all credit to his spiritual master. Once when he was leaving the manor, Srila Prabhupada said that I have no qualification. My only qualification is that I tried to follow the instructions of my spiritual master. Then he stood up to leave, and before leaving the room he went over to the picture of his spiritual master and touched his head to his lotus feet, and then he went.